It's not time yet. I'm just getting ready. But you can keep talking. Okay, I have 1 o'clock on the button, so we'll get started. I am going to be watching that camera back there just in case you see me looking off into the distance. That's where our listening audience, our online audience is, and that camera in the back of the Wood Center. So if you see me over there, that's what I'm doing. Thank you for being here to talk about my favorite subject of the year, which is what, Fernando? Enrollment. Enrollment is everybody's job. Thank you. And I also have on my A-Bear hat, and it says OHT on it, and I get more questions about, what the heck is OHT? So somebody clarify for the audience, what is OHT? This could be a long day. Who's got it? Somebody, OHT. Thank goodness I brought this up. It is a hockey term, and Tom, you got it, right? OHT, Operation Hat Trick, which means what? How do you get a hat trick in hockey? Thank you. 3 goals. 3 goals in one event. Sorry. From now on, we all know that term. All right. Enrollment. So we have 4 forums a year. I do 4 forums a year. Every year they change a little bit, but every year there's one forum that's the same, and that's enrollment, because enrollment is key to our vitality, the vibrancy of campus. It's important to our finances. It's important to student success. And we have had enrollment every year, partly because, our high, the time when UAF had its peak enrollment twice, really, there was a big peak in 2003, and then there was another big peak in like 2011. And then it kind of went down for a number of years. And about when I started 2018, we kind of had a conversation, what is going on, and how do we affect our future? Fortunately, about that time, we started asking the question or learning about strategic enrollment planning, and Owen and others started thinking about strategic enrollment and how do we think about deliberately changing the campus environment and deliberately changing the enrollment landscape instead of kind of the old model, which is students come and we recruit them, but we admit them. And thinking about what is it so special about UAF that attracts students here? And how do we do things? How is it everybody's job that does things to impact that? About 6 years ago, we started seeing what's called the enrollment cliff. You've heard me talk about that. That's this time when we know that the number of students in the country is just going down because the birth rate went down 18 years ago. And the birth rate went down, and the birth rate continues to go down. And so those students, we know starting in 2026, the number of college-age students is going to drop, and it's going to drop quite a bit. And we also know that the percentage of students who go to university is lower than it was a decade ago, and it has been dropping. And so the percentage is going down, and the net number is going down. Thankfully, we here at UAF have an awesome product that is our education and our transformative experience that we offer at UAF. That's awesome, and that isn't changing. It's not going to change, and in fact, it's growing as we recognize what are the things that make this a transformative experience. As you know, we have been thinking now, all of us are thinking all the time about this changing federal landscape, and one of the things that is kind of unnerving a bit about the federal landscape and the changing landscape is we just don't have a lot of certainty. We don't have certainty about what the changes to the research agencies is going to be. We don't have certainty about changes to the Department of Education. It sounds like it's going to be disassembled, but those functions are going to go somewhere else, and what's that going to mean? If the federal loans are now through the Small Business Administration, how is our relationship and how do we build a relationship with the SBA so that our students continue to get federal financial aid in a smooth and logical way? As we think about all these things that we have no real certainty over, what are the things we do have certainty over? And that is the things that we do to affect the student experience here at UAF, and the things that we can do, which are entirely in our control, to grow enrollment. So this is a place that students walk across campus, prospective students, current students, and say, yeah, this is the transformative experience for me. I'm investing my next 1 year or 4 years or 6 years in UAF because I believe in the product that we offer. We are going to talk about enrollment. Of course, before I do that, if you have questions, now most of our audience is online, and so we've just decided we're just going to go with online questions, and you can scan this QR code if you're in the room, and then text your question in, and then Marmion will get it right there in the back of the room, and then they'll bring questions up and we'll answer questions at the end. This QR code will be up several times more, so you can get to that. One other thing before I forget, we have a distinguished guest here in the front on the left, who in the cornerstone, right there, Anutma, raise your hand, who in the cornerstone announced that she is going to be retiring, and I thought we should just give Anutma a round of applause. Yay. All right, thank you for that. Thank you, Anutma. So we've got Owen Guthrie, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, and Laura Connor, who's our Interim Vice Chancellor for Research. We're going to talk about different aspects of enrollment, and then at the end I'll talk about kind of where we're going with some enrollment strategies around admission standards. So who goes next? Owen, it's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor White. You'll see that QR code again in a moment. But I'm going to start off with the question of why enrollment. And so we're going to just establish some kind of baseline, foundational ideas. So enrollment is important because we collectively believe in the tremendous value of what we do. We believe in the value of education for our students. And we believe that our enterprise, the enterprise we undertake each day when we come to work, delivers enormous individual benefits for students as well as collective economic and social benefits. Enrollment just may be the tonic for our times. With big hearts, we each believe, especially on the enrollment side, that enrollment can make the world a better place. We also believe deeply that UAF, our humble home here and around the state, is a special place, that it's an amazing place, and that here we provide students with life-changing opportunities for self-betterment. And when we're talking about enrollment, what do we mean by that? What is it? Enrollment is many things, but mostly it is, of course, about students and their journey with us to a better future. It's about students who choose our CTC programs. It's about our undergraduate and graduate students here at our Trotieta campus. And it's about our rural campus students and our students in online programs around the US and around the world. If you will, it's the whole of our UAF student community. It's also about retention. Once students are here, it's about retaining them. We're already serving them. Let's keep them here. Let's serve them. Let's help them get to where their dreams are taking them. In addition, and sometimes we don't think about this, enrollment is about potential students, students who are not yet here. It's about those who might choose UAF if only they knew about all the amazing opportunities that we can offer them. So, enrollment is about students at every stage of their journey, from potential awareness all the way through to graduation and beyond. The business of enrollment is something that some of us, especially on the instructional side, find more challenging to grapple with mentally, because as Chancellor White said, for many years, students just showed up on campus, and there wasn't a business approach behind it. We simply offered a valuable service, and the students came in tides. But that's changing. So the business of enrollment is now more than ever about the financial health of our enterprise. It's about attaining more institutional fiscal independence. The enrollment business is about staff and faculty jobs. It's about your job. When Chancellor White says that enrollment is everyone's job, there's a double meaning in that phrase. Enrollment is foundational to our collective employment. So enrollment is about our students, both here and potentially here. It's all of our jobs. It's the wonderful thing about our collective cause is that our enrollment work just may save the world. That's what I believe. And it's good work. It's good for our students. And it's good for our collective future. So let's take a brief tour through UAF enrollment history. Chancellor White talked about how in 2010 we hit this high of about 11,100 students. I was here then. Some of the rest of you may have been. As you remember, every classroom was full, every dorm room was full, we were at capacity. We kept north of 10,000 students till about 2014 or so, just 10 years ago, we were still at 10,000 students. And then for the next 7 years, we lost 25 to 30% of our students. And then at the end there on the right-hand side, there's some kind of very gentle growth, some sort of flat. It looks kind of flat, but actually behind that, there's quite a bit of complexity. As always in enrollment, the moment you put a chart up, there's a, well, yes, but, maybe, but it's complicated. So let's look behind those last 5 years. Actually, those last 5 years at first glance appear just to have some very gentle minimal growth, have some amazing growth on the first-time, full-time, 4-year undergraduate enrollment side. That's what this is, that F4Y, that's a funky little acronym that enrollment people use. We're talking about this major cohort. And at UAF, you know, every student is important, no matter what program. It doesn't matter if we're the PhD or occupational endorsement. But those full-time 4-year students, they take the most credit hours. They're our bread and butter. So to grow that cohort in 5 years from 654 to 846, 200 students, that's a big darn deal. It's really big, and we are the envy of many of our peers for being able to do that. How did that happen? It happened, as Chancellor White said, back in 2018. We were struggling a little bit on enrollment, and we started to coalesce around this idea. Let's approach this systematically. So we got a big group of people together. And since then, every year, the Strategic Enrollment Planning Efforts, SEP, has been meeting year on year, and we've been reinvesting institutional resources every year in funding dozens of SEP proposals over the last 7 years or so. We just met last Friday to fund the latest batch, or to seek funding for the latest batch of SEP proposals. Lots of great program ideas and great retention ideas and ways to improve the enrollment landscape at UAF. Last year, we started a new group at UAF which is designed to enhance agility. It's called CAKE, or the Chancellors Committee on Enrollment, Chancellors Action Committee on Enrollment. Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's a big deal. The idea is more agility. It's composed of the people who are close to the problems, and they can make direct recommendations to the chancellor. Includes advising and recruitment and faculty and academic leadership. It's a great committee. We also have, for years at UF, we've had the retention committee. Recently, that's been kind of remixed and reformulated as the Retention Innovation Hub with co-chairs Jen Tilbury and Tim Scherer. We're really excited. They're going to continue the work of the Gardner Institute. They're looking at gateway courses. They're looking at lots of systemic advising systems, lots of systemic retention issues for us. We also have, most recently, the System Office retained EAB, it's a national enrollment leader, to produce a report for the system. They came up with 60 recommendations in a report that came out this last January, 16 recommendations for the system. UAF received 15. We are already hard at work on those 15 recommendations, and that's called the System-Wide Attainment Framework. If you go to uaf.edu/enrollment, you can learn all about these things and many more. Let's go to the next slide. One of the big recommendations from that report from EAB is that we switch fundamentally, foundationally, culturally, and systemically from a passive approach to enrollment, which is what most of public higher education has had in the US for many, many decades, to an active approach, right? So it's forward-leaning across all things. We are right in the middle of doing that. Our admissions unit is making that transformation. Our advising systems and staffing are making that transmogrification, if you will. We've been transitioning to this much more forward-leaning and active approach. And so this is a lot of work going on, and you may wonder, like, why? Why all the fuss? And Chancellor White kind of hinted a bit. We've talked before. You've seen this slide. This is coming. This yellow arrow here is pointing at where we are for the fall 2025 graduating class for the graduating high school cohort. This coming fall is the last fall before what we call the enrollment cliff or the enrollment precipice. It starts in fall 26, as Chancellor White said. It's 18 years after the 2008 financial crisis. Enrollment people refer to the time after that fall to the enrollment Hunger Games. It's going to get tough out there. Thank you. Enrollment humor is subtle. Really, really subtle. Anyway, yeah, it's going to get tough out there. And it's a good thing we've been working on this for 7 years. And so I'm really proud of all the work that so many of you in this room have done and so many people across UAF has done to try and get ahead of it a little bit. The enrollment funnel model is how enrollment people kind of visualize the journey, the student journey. It illustrates the stages prospective students move through from initial awareness to final enrollment. And what we saw over time at UAF in our funnel, so everybody in the institution has a funnel, in our funnel, it started to narrow, right? So we got to our yield rate, which is the percentage of the students who start at the top and enroll at the bottom. Our yield rate got really, really high. We were north of 40% yield rate, which is amazing. It's the envy of many of our peers. But our net enrollment funnel was shrinking while it was happening. So if you take that model out a little bit, eventuality is we get 100% yield rate on the few students who know at the beginning that they are absolutely going to attend UAF. So our natural strategy then is to say, okay, that's not going to work long term. We need to broaden the funnel. We need to greatly expand the top of the funnel. The students who know about us need to learn about us. And so how do we do that? Where do we go to find those students? We know we needed more high school students, but we also know that Alaska has a pretty limited number of high school graduates each year. In case you didn't know, it's about 8,000. It doesn't change much. It's going up slightly for a couple years, but then it's supposed to go down in a few years. And the number of those high school graduating students in Alaska, the percentage who attend post-secondary education has been falling year on year on year. So that's a pretty hard market to say, yeah, we're going to grow our funnel right here at home. Yes, you can do some of that, and we have, but really we need to look elsewhere. So this is our land of opportunity. Bear with me for a moment and to think about a kind of a thought experiment. There are 4 million high school graduates in the US every year, 4 million. I believe that if every single one of those students knew about UAF, had a feeling for what we offer, the great value, the amazing vistas, the amazing experiences and opportunities we offer them, the low instructor to student ratios, the great research experiences. I believe that if you just kind of think about that for a minute, what does that feel like? 4 million potential students each fall. I believe that if that were to happen in the fall, this fall, there'd be this tide of students. Alaska Airlines would be booked solid. Parents and students would be getting off the jet. Our dorms would be full. I really like, in my dream model, you know, the photo of the students, the miners climbing the Chilkoot Pass, like the trail up there. This is what this looks like with students coming to UAF to seek their dreams. It'd be full, and they'd be coming to like attend under the blue and gold banner of UAF. I really believe that it's awareness is our #1 problem. That's our challenge. So how do we seek to grow the funnel in the lower 48? We have great people. There are many people in this room, faculty, staff, doing this work internally. But we also need some external help. We needed partnerships. So we sought partnerships with some of the very best. EAB here on the slide, they're the #1 leader in the nation for enrollment management services. And we partnered with them for this fall to buy 40,000 names. So we identified carefully with an algorithm, 40,000 students with better than 3.5 GPA, with interests that are similar to the programs we offer in geographic areas where we know we've done well before, and we direct market them with multimodal marketing. If you know what that's like the Geico commercials, right? We're the Nanook's showing up everywhere for them, just like the Geico lizard guy. We're the Nanook. We're showing up on all their social media apps. We're showing up everywhere they go. It's amazing. EAB has been very helpful. In addition to those names, we're also buying tens of thousands of potential graduate student names, and we're marketing the same way to them. So EAB is really helping provide the funnel broadening efforts, as well as just some great practical top of game recruitment advice. Also, and perhaps the most powerful single tool in our toolbox right now is Common App. Common App has 1 million high school graduates on it for this fall, shopping for colleges. UAF is there. We're showing up. We've got great media content. We're showing them who we are, and we're getting thousands of applications from across the US where we've never gotten them before. Common App's amazing for us. It is the direction that post-secondary education applications are going. We'll talk more about that in a moment. We're also rekindling our corporate enrollment program. This is a particular market demographic that's really important to serve. It's based around employers who offer tuition benefits to their employees. They're often working, always working, so it's a different way to communicate with them. You communicate via their employer, you're a trusted communication channel via their employer. And we're rebooting that to provide these upskilling opportunities to employees to help them kind of move up within the workplace. A couple more to go. Direct admissions apps. I don't know, anybody familiar with what these are? A couple hand raises from my people, a few people. Direct admissions apps flips the script. It's amazing how if you're in this room and you have kids who are not yet college age, by the time your kids go to college, this may be the new format. It used to be for decades, you apply to a college, the college would sit there and sort through the apps and say, yep, nope, yep, nope, yep, nope. This flips the script where colleges apply to students, and students say, nope, 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 maybe. So we're there, we're on several of these direct admissions apps, we apply to students. And this is helping us with some good positive yield. We also have Shorelight. Shorelight is the national leader in international student recruitment. We're partnered with them. UAF used to have a really robust population of international students. We're going to get there again with our partnership with Shorelight. And lastly, we work with ReUp. ReUp is an organization that helps students with some college and no degree get back to college. And they're helping us, and we're looking for some good things with them. So this is just a few of our partnerships, kind of representative across the board. There's a lot more. There's probably 2 or 3 times this many total. But we're really just getting started here. So let's look at the results. This is my favorite part, where we talk about what does all this yield for this fall 2025. The blue is 5 years ago, fall 2020. I just kind of want to bask in this moment a little bit. There's some people who've done some really good work. That bottom number there, 4,949 admitted students for fall 2025. This is the highest number of admitted students ever at UAF, ever. In this enrollment class, there we go. Thank you. It's some really good stuff. It's amazing growth. It shows our strategies are working. Great people here doing a lot, pushing a lot of our teams, people working hard. I like to think about each and every one of those individual 4,949 students. That's the Carlson Center entirely packed. That's all across the US. Every single one of those students said, yeah, I'm going to do they went through the entire application process, sent us their transcripts. They may be here this fall. It may be just yet that the Chilkoot Trail is full of students hiking up to come to UAF. This shift in demographics, you can see fall 2024 on the left, fall 2025 on the right. What happens if we start to really bolster this non-resident population is it shifts demographically what UAF is a little bit. For years, we've been 20% non-resident. What if we get to 25, 30, 40, 50% non-resident? Much more economically viable, much more economically strong. This is what some of our peers have done. This is what Montana State has done. This is what Purdue has done. This is absolutely, EAB says, yeah, you could be the next Montana State, no problem, because we have such an awesome, unique value proposition that resonates with students. That's what this is telling us. Yep, students are seeing us. We're in front of 1 million of them. There's 5,000 applicants out there. What if we get in front of 4 million of them, 20,000 applicants? Maybe. I think it's possible. You can see this is the 5 states where we have on-the-ground recruiters. This is just more sort of, this is a victory lap a little bit. More great enrollment numbers from our top 5 states. Really excited about this. You can see Texas is way up for us. We do have an on-the-ground recruiter in Texas. Texas and Alaska have always had a special connection. If you've been here a long time, you know, back in the day we used to have Texan jokes. But we love every Texan who wants to come to school at UAF. So when students apply, we're getting more than just the interest in us. We're also getting indicators of their interest in what we are offering that they are interested in. And that's really important. We did a survey effectively through Common App of 1 million high school graduates. And this are the programs that they told us that the top 5 that they're interested in. That's powerful. Wildlife, biology, and conservation, business administration, mechanical engineering, biological sciences, and engineering undeclared. This was their feedback saying, yeah, actually, in gross, this is where most of the US is feeling like what we have to offer is of value to them. There's a ton of value downstream from here, of course. We have a bunch of programs. In fact, we have 125 undergraduate programs. The top 20 programs on our application received 65% of all applications, the top 20 programs. The top 50 at UAF, the top 50 programs of 125, contain 87% of all enrollment. That's almost 90%. And the next 75 programs is 13% of all enrollment. So my question kind of to this group, and my challenge that I kind of think about is, how can we do better? What if we had 2 more programs that are like those top 5 programs, that had that kind of enrollment gravity? We talk about gravity. Like it's pulling students from Texas and Alabama and Tennessee saying, yeah, I want to be a part of that. What you got going on there? That program, programs drive enrollment. What if we had 5 more programs like that? That'd be good for all of us. It'd be amazing. Tons of opportunity here for us, I think. So speaking of opportunity, there's so much opportunity to improve our retention at UAF. This is one of the areas where I'm glad to have such great partnerships across the institution. We know that there are great things we can do here, but there's also great things we are doing here. I could have done this 15-minute presentation on just the great things on retention, but I focused on recruitment today. Full-time retention rates for both our 2-year and 4-year programs are on the rise due to lots of people doing lots of good intentional work. Our 4-year retention rate is passing 74%, on its way back to 78%, which is pre-COVID rate. The goal is north of 80%, and we're going to get there. It's going to happen. We have all the tools. We just got to get some time and a few more resources to get there. This is my last slide. I spent a lot of time today focused mostly on our 4-year recruitment strategies. But of course, every program at UAF prepares students for the workforce. So I want to talk about 2-year programs. Those are often called workforce programs, but we know that every program, graduate, undergraduate, occupational endorsement, those are workforce programs. But I wanted to mention that our 2-year program leadership, starting with Vice Chancellor of Rural and Community Native Education, Charlene Stern, AVC Brian Ewer, and Interim Dean of CCC, Kevin Alexander, are doing great things to help strengthen and revitalize both our CTC enrollments as well as our rural campus enrollments. And in that vein, I wanted to give a shout out to our leaders out there on our rural campuses, Minnie Naylor, leading Chukchi and holding down the fort at Northwest Campus, Wanda Wall at Bristol Bay, Haley Hansen at Kuskokwim Campus, and of course, Julie Biddle at IAC. Thank you to those of you for all your work to help us modernize our community and rural campuses. It's a really big deal for UAF. Tons of opportunity there to serve the state. And I know there's so many good ideas, and people are spending hours and weekends and nights thinking about how to make that better. Anyway, lots of great work going on at UF on the enrollment front. Look forward to some questions. Things are looking very strong for fall. Here's your question scan. Scan it now. I'm going to say a few more things. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague. My great appreciation and respect to every single one of you who's working hard to make this happen. Yes, as Chancellor White said, there's a ton of uncertainty right now in higher education, but we are doing all the things. We are doing all the things to give us safety and security in these kind of uncertain times ahead. And for everybody who's working in that space, my eternal gratitude. So thank you very much. We haven't really talked about our graduate enrollments yet, and as promised, here to do so now is Interim Vice Chancellor for Research, Laura Connor.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Guthrie. Can people hear me? Great. Okay, so as promised, I'm going to talk a little bit about graduate enrollment. And so why are we breaking graduate enrollment out, right? We know that graduate enrollment is important as part of our overall educational mission, just as undergraduate enrollment is. And it's linked tightly to both research and workforce. The reason that we're going to break it out, though, is because while it has similarities to undergraduate enrollment, there's also some kind of important differences. And so the connection to our external funding landscape in particular is a key difference. So we're going to dive into the topic of graduate enrollment a little bit now. So where are we at? We'll start with looking at master's enrollment on this slide. So master's degrees are a mix of professional degrees and thesis-based master's degrees. So the former often don't rely on external funding, while the latter do. So you can see in this slide, master's enrollment has had some fluctuation over time, just like our overall enrollment. So we had a slight downward trend from the peak in 2010, due in part, of course, to COVID financials in the recent years that we've undergone. But the last couple of years have really seen a strong uptick. And so you look at 2024, we were up to 670 master's students. 2024 is looking particularly strong. So in terms of doctoral enrollment, the picture looks in some ways similar, in some ways different. So we had fairly consistent increases, as you can see from the slide, from the year 2000 up to our peak in 2013. The peak for PhD enrollees was 422 students in that year. Then we had kind of a steady drop followed by some relatively flat years, although we did see an uptick in 2024, up to 320. So it's really great to see that uptick more recently. And while the upturn is really encouraging, the overall numbers have not recovered quite the way that some of the master's numbers have, and there are some reasons for that. And I want to take a deeper look at that in the next slide. And so this slide is going to really focus on looking at our research expenditures versus our PhD student enrollment. I feel like this is a really fascinating slide, actually, to look at. And so this graph shows the PhD numbers over time in the yellow line and our research expenditures at UAF in the white line. So because graduate enrollment, especially PhD enrollment, is tightly linked to our research expenditure landscape, we would expect those lines to sort of show some level of correlation. But as you can see from the graph, they appear to be pretty decoupled, even inverted. And so that kind of indicates to me that our research and our academic missions have kind of gone on slightly different trajectories in the last number of years here. And so the uptick that we saw in master's students a couple of slides ago can account for a little bit of this gap, but it can't account for all of this gap, right? And so there's an opportunity here. We have an opportunity to link more tightly our PhD enrollment to our research expenditures. And so I challenge everybody here to be thinking about how can we encourage that to happen. So our decoupling of PhD student support from research dollars is further underlined when we take a look at the trends at our peer institutions, as shown in this slide. So as you can see, UAF graduated 31 PhD students in 2023, where our peers graduated 95, 80, and 190 respectively. And it's really interesting when you look at that in comparison to our research expenditures across those different schools in that same year. So in some cases, we have higher or even really significantly higher amount of research expenditures at UAF compared to some of these peer institutions. So I think the really important thing to think about, right, is that if we are enrolling about 300 or more students per year, kind of on average over the last several years, if those students graduated within 5 or 6 years, we would expect a graduation rate more like 50 or 60 per year rather than sort of in the low 30s. And so one of the ways that we can really impact our graduation rate is just by decreasing our time to degree for those PhD students. So how can we shift this metric? We all play a role in the 3 areas that are listed on this slide, and many actions to support these areas are already underway. We're shifting our culture at UAF such that we're setting more explicit expectations around time to degree, and we're removing restrictions around who can serve as a PhD student advisor. In terms of process improvement, which is the second area listed there, thanks to the efforts of the Graduate School, the Faculty Senate, the R1 Committee, and lots of others in this room, we're streamlining and standardizing graduate admissions processes. And we've now established degree works for graduate students, thanks to a huge effort at the Graduate School, which is super exciting. And so faculty and staff can support students by using these tools that we have in place to better monitor student progress and help students over the finish line in a more timely manner. We're also implementing other avenues of support, such as dedicated graduate level writing advisor. And so that's new, and that's really exciting. So these steps collectively will help both master's and PhD students alike. So So as Owen discussed earlier, recruitment is part of the enrollment picture as well. And here again, there's similarities and differences between undergraduate and graduate enrollment. And so we know that many PhD students come here to work with a specific advisor rather than a program as a whole. Even if we have really attractive programs, sometimes they're more focused on that specific faculty member. And so for recruitment efforts in this area, the R1 team has implemented campus visits to help cement the relationship between those advisors and prospective students. And Owen already described a lot of efforts earlier with respect to marketing campaigns, partnerships, and other efforts that are really supporting a higher number of graduate applications per year for both master's and PhD, and that is still part of the story. And especially for master's enrollment, this is going to be a really critical part of the story. And so you can see that the number of graduate applications has increased quite a bit from 2024 even to 2025. And so what we can do is we can help take steps to convert those to admits. So to kind of sum up around the graduate enrollment picture, increasing graduate enrollment is part of our mandate and it's part of our mission. And if we take the right steps, including mentoring more graduate students, improving processes and student experiences, decreasing time to degree, and linking more funding to PhD student support, we're just going to get to R1 along the way. It'll just happen. And once that status is reached, it will continue to feed back into enrollment because it'll increase our reputation, so it'll be more attractive for students to come here. We're going to attract more highly productive faculty. We already have many highly productive faculty. We'll continue to attract more. And that in turn, all those efforts will further support enrollment and fiscal stability at the university. So I'm really excited to work with people on reaching R1 and really just continuing to support our graduate enrollment as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd just like a quick show of hands of who's in the enrollment business. Caitlin, thank you. Yeah. All right. Who's in the enrollment business? Okay, thank you. There's like 2/3 of you. First time. I heard Owen say two things right in a row when he stood up here. And the first was enrollment is everyone's job. And then he said enrollment will change the world. So I think what you said is this group is in charge of changing the world. So no pressure. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some just initiative for many years. We have UAF since it was in the 1978 reorganization, and we were joined with CTC and the rural campuses, and again, shout out to our rural campuses. We are this organization of the research campus, which we've been calling Trothieta, with CTC and the rural campuses feeding into both CTC and Trothieta. And we have been an open enrollment university. And one of the challenges about open enrollment, or the concept of open enrollment, is every student that comes in, we want. And we want that now, and we will continue to want that. But what we've done in the past is a student comes, they get some feedback from friends, they look at the cost, they look online, they job opportunities, talk to their parents, maybe things they've experienced. As an open enrollment, they make a decision, and then they decide, well, I'm going to go to CTC or I'm going to go to Trothieta. And because they're both open enrollment, and they don't get advising until they get into the institution. And one of the factors, what is who knows what our full-time first-time freshman graduation rate is for baccalaureate students? What is it? 40%. Rough numbers is 40%. And that is like best in class among open enrollment universities. That's great in open enrollment universities. Because there's a lot of students that come in and they're not interested in kind of that pathway. But if you're a student and you're in California and you're looking at graduation rates of institutions, you would look at that number and you'd say, whoa, hold on. If I go to UAF, I only have a 40% chance of graduating in 6 years. It's called the 6-year graduation rate. I only have a 40% chance of graduating in 6 years? Ugh. Or all of my colleagues, only 40% of them are going to graduate. The reality is, of our students who come in to get their degree, the rate is much higher, but there's a lot of students who come in and they end up in our system for a long time, and we need to figure out how to parse that out so that we are demonstrating the features of UAF that allow students to go wherever they want, to get the degree that they want, but to do it in an efficient manner, and it shows that way in our numbers. So this challenge that we've had of students come in, they have a lot of feedback, they come to the institute, they decide before they get to the institution where they're gonna go. Some of them go to CTC, they get their advising, they get a one-year certificate, they graduate, a smiley face, or they do their two-year associate, they graduate, they have a smiley face, or they matriculate from the two-year associate into the baccalaureate degree, they decide they want to be an engineer, and they graduate. And those are all happy outcomes. But there's also the outcome where a student hits that open enrollment and says, you know what, I don't know, I think I'm going to go to the research university. And I haven't got advising yet, but once I'm in the research university, I get a bunch of advising on how to do this. And if that student's first choice is a degree for which they're unprepared, and that is just to say, for any number of reasons, they weren't able to access, a lot of our schools don't have the calculus that a student might need or the kinds of classes that they might need, we have a journey for them to get to those courses. But in some cases, the student decides, well, I was unprepared for what I thought I wanted based on this blue stuff down here, my friends and the cost and job opportunities and my parents. Yeah, I thought I wanted to be a space physicist. I just wasn't prepared to be a space physicist. I guess I'll just do blank instead and get this other degree because I've now got 200 credits and I could get this degree. They get a degree and that's a success. That is a big deal. That's a good thing. But they go out, their graduation, they graduated, that's a celebration. But it's not kind of what they came here for. We also have this situation where a student comes in, they say, well, I think I'm gonna go to Trothieta. To get into Trothieta, it does not require any GPA. To get into an academic program in Trothieta, it requires a 2.5 GPA. The student comes in, they kind of, if they're struggling in their first, if space physics or whatever, and then they go to the second choice, they're struggling, they get into this journey of different classes. Many of those then don't get a degree at all. And we know that only, this is a really staggering statistic, only 12% of the students that come in to Trothieta that have a GPA of below, a high school GPA of below 2.5 ever graduate. Ever. Students with a high school GPA of below 2.5 get into Trothieta and they go on that bottom journey, spend a lot of time, and they don't graduate. And that is not a successful outcome for the student, and it's not a successful outcome for us. And that's part of what this 40% graduation rate is how do we fix this? How do we fix this so our service to students is meeting their needs and getting positive outcomes no matter where you go in this great kind of university of CTC, Trothieta, and the rural campuses that is UAF. This is what we think the solution is. And this is what I talked about this a year ago in some communications to the campus. I know the Faculty Senate is talking about how to address kind of this category of students that didn't have a 2.5 that we call those bachelor's intended at UAF. That's that journey at the bottom. And the key is to get advising up front and to work with students and say, let's talk about what degree, what your high school experience was, what your high school experience was like, what background you have, what math you took, what math you need, and then factor that into what, your parents' input, if you still take your parents' input. I'm just kidding. I have girls, I hope they still take my input. Friends, your costs, kind of the job opportunities that you want for yourself, what information you're getting online, and you've been advised already, so you already have information about what the institution's going to be like, and then you get to this decision point as a student. Open enrollment pathway still exists for you, but if you want to go into the research university, there's admissions requirements. So instead of having people get into Trothieta, but then not be able to get into a program because of GPA, we just say, okay, let's figure out if you don't have the GPA to get into one of the Trothieta programs, we get you over here into CTC, and you could choose a 1-year certificate, you could choose a 2-year certificate, or you could still choose that path over to the 4-year, but let's get you the special advising that you need. So this is kind of the upfront advising, and then still being open enrollment, but also enabling students to see kind of the more clear path early on. And we think this will have positive impacts for the students and positive impacts for the institution. That is the proposal that I kind of laid out about a year ago. People have been working on it. As I mentioned, the Faculty Senate it's in the CAC, I think. Is that where it is? The Bachelor Intended proposal to think about how we look at Bachelor Intended at UAF, this category of students who don't yet have the GPA. And the Board of Regents now has a committee, an innovation committee, and there was a big stack of questions. An innovation committee, and they're looking at this for UAF, because having that kind of upfront advising and then admissions requirements, that would be a first for the University of Alaska system. And so the Board of Regents wants to approve that. Okay, clearly I don't need to tell you to scan this, because I have enough questions to last us until the end of next week. But we'll get started, but feel free to text that if you want. Okay. All right. Let me look at these questions. First question, and I'll ask this to Owen. What is being done to support innovation or growth in the programs beyond the 5 that you listed? So you had the biology and wildlife and those. How do we get some of these others into that category?
Great question. So I just want to be clear about the model. We surveyed 1 million students. The students themselves said, this is what we're interested in. So the question is, how do we reach deeper into our portfolio to draw interest across the depths of our portfolio, some of the other areas of our portfolio? We do not do yet much in the way of individual program marketing. We just don't have the resources. So we do institutional marketing. When we're reaching out to a student, prospective student, we're trying to get there more and more to where there's a lot of algorithm-based marketing research where you say, look, we know that because of your profile, your parents' profile, your demographics, your earnings, your voter record, the things you buy from Amazon, like all that stuff's available. All that stuff is what our partners are using to target market. We think you're going to love music or art or whatever it is. We're not quite there yet. That's where we're going. I would ask back to that, how do we as an institution, I mean, most of us have been here for a while. The portfolio of programs we've had have been here for a while. How do we collectively shepherd that batch of opportunities for students to make sure that they're what they need to be to resonate with the 4 million graduating high school seniors each year? How do we do that? What's our process from that? We have a process. It's maybe not the most agile. The modern day market would ask us to be more agile, would ask us to really respond to more current market demand opportunities.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions here. Several are about yield, and you talked about yield. Can you, there's several questions, I'm just going to summarize them, about what is the difference in yield with these 5,000 students, and how does the yield equation work? I mean, how do we move that yield up if it's low, and what steps are we taking between the application and the admission?
Thank you to whoever asked this question. This is a great question from the enrollment perspective, and it allows us to talk a little bit more about some of the magic behind the scenes. So I mentioned that we traditionally had a 40+% yield for our traditional methods of recruitment in the state of Alaska. Common App averages about a 10% yield. for the millions of applications, 4 million applications. Well, actually what's happening nationally is undergraduate students are applying to more and more institutions individually. So the average now number of applications that a Common App student submits is 10 or 11. So you can imagine that's 4 million students, that's 40 million apps. What's our share of that? Yes, it's growing. How do we capture that interest? That for that moment when the student said, UAF, I could be there, that might be me, that might be my future. What our peers are doing, Montana State, is they have resources and humans and AI tools and electronic tools to reach out to those students, to keep them engaged, to continue to capture that moment of imagination where they can see themselves enrolling at an institution throughout that journey. So that student may raise their hand in December, January, school starts the following August. It is absolutely capturing and engaging throughout that entire 8-9 month journey to make sure the student stays engaged with a vision of themselves at our institution. That's the challenge. Is, you know, we lived in an eyeballs economy, and it would be nice if the old model, and this is what EAB said we should make the transition from. The old model was simply, we're here, we got a bunch of stuff, we'll see you in the fall, and we could tell a student that in November, and they'd be here the next fall. Now, our peers are saying, we're here, hey, it's Monday, I haven't heard from you all weekend, how are you doing? Did you check out our student clubs? We got great clubs. And they just are hitting students, every Instagram, everything, all the time, engaging. That's on us. That's the reality of our marketplace. That's how we get there. And this relates to individual programs as well as our yield throughout the funnel activity. Some of those apps have very high yield relative because they're tailored to us and we're just really trying to attract a few students. And others are much lower percentages. So Common App average is 10%. If we get 7% off Common App, we'll be doing amazing. And really, I think that's about what we got last year, something in that neighborhood. I'm looking at Anna Ganyahash, she's the expert here. Much of this work is her and her team, so thanks to her. Yield is something that if you want to be involved with it, you want to learn more about it, talk to me. It is absolutely critical to our long-term success.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to ask you another question, but I'm going to ask Laura one first. So I'm going to ask it for you so you can think about it, Owen, and that is actions. And you mentioned just kind of calling on Monday, but getting from passive to active. Maybe think of some other examples. There was a couple questions. Laura, I had at least 2 questions here about the graph that you showed with the increasing kind of skyrocket in our federal expenditures and the relatively modest increase in PhD students. And just several questions asked you to talk about that a little bit more. You know, why is the gap so big, and is it just a matter of catching up? Talk about that gap a little bit more.
So I think one of the really interesting things about that graph is that there's not just a gap, but the lines actually crossed, right? And so you would imagine that they would kind of, one would be above the other. The research expenditures would be above the graduate, or the other way around. What we saw in the early part of the graph is that we had a high number of graduate students. Our research expenditures, it depends on how you draw the axes, right? But they were kind of going in concert like this. But then all of a sudden, it kind of collapsed to a certain point and then crossed and went the other direction. It's concerning, right? To me, that indicates that we are not, and that was PhDs specifically. So we know that masters, if we put a master's line on there, that might actually account for some of the gap there, but it wouldn't account for a lot of it. So one of the things that we think is happening, right, is a lot of times we're, for very good reasons, writing postdocs into grants, writing research staff into grants, and those are important positions. We don't want to stop doing that, but it does mean that we have an opportunity to include more PhD support in a lot of our grants. And so that's part of the answer to the question.
So maybe that a lot of that rise too is from our big contracts from DoD, which are largely contracts that employ staff. But there may be ways that we can integrate PhD students into those as well.
Yeah, we have a lot of research facilities that are, as Chancellor White said, very large external contracts that are primarily focused on staff work. But I firmly believe that we can actually integrate PhDs into those, right? So it's really this idea of trying to make sure that our academic and our research missions are more tightly coupled and that we're growing those together rather than on separate trajectories. What was the other part of the question, Chancellor White?
I think you covered it.
I covered it? Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Owen, some examples from passive to active. And then the other thing, which I didn't warn you about, is being a destination, how we market ourselves as a destination university, and how we engage the rural campuses in that destination character.
Awesome. Passive to active. So I mentioned a little bit the idea of an active, what it feels like from a student's perspective to be on an active recruitment journey where someone or something is reaching out to you daily, engaging you, listening to who you are, what you want, all the different points of the institution you can connect with. For a different example of the passive to active, I'm going to turn to advising. Like most large state public universities, we have had historically a pretty passive advising system. We open registration, students see their advisor, they get registered. A few years ago, I think it was 3 years ago in the fall, August 1st, we had 50% of our returning students registered for the fall semester on August 1st, which means we had 50% who had yet to register for the fall semester on August 1st. I was telling a friend of mine who works in the enrollment industry who's providing financial aid consulting with us, and he said, what? That's not okay. That's not acceptable. For an institution that is enrollment focused, you need to be thinking about how to get to 90% of your returning students registered before they leave for the summer. That's how you know they're coming back. They register for class. Registration's open April 7th. I'm working with Tim Scherer, Director of Advising. We're going to set some pretty good goals to try and get as many students as possible registered before they go home for the summer. But I said, well, here's the problem. Our student culture doesn't really support that. Our students they just want to go at work. They just want to go do their thing. He said, well, that's fine. What are your advisors doing if they're not advising students? I was like, well, they're doing other things. But he said, well, they can register students for them. You simply start working a list of engineering students, a very prescriptive curriculum. Hey, email them. I got your fall classes for you. Here's what they are. You have to pick up a couple electives. I got you an appointment on this date. Does this time work? It's a different way of thinking about our services students. It's forward-leaning. It's proactive. I've got you. I'm taking care of you. A single advisor has a staple of students, say 100 students or 200 students. This is yours. These are my students, and you're responsible to get them registered for fall. It is a culture change. That's heresy. What I just said, it sounds easy, but in public open enrollment institutions, it's a little bit heresy to think that you would step over and just register your students for them. But that is where we're going. That's where our competition's going as well. To your question about destination school.
Okay, be quick about it though.
Quick.
Thank you.
Yes, our opportunity, there's two different types of universities, commodity universities, destination universities. We are not a commodity university. We're a destination university because of who we are, because of where we are, because of the amazing opportunities and experiences we offer. Communicating that is our challenge. As part of that, our rural campuses, what more amazing destination on the planet than Kotzebue, Bethel, Nome,
Dillingham.
Yeah, these are our amazing destinations we have. They are absolutely critical to our identity and our future as a destination university.
Thank you. I'm going to I just have 2 minutes. We have amazing questions, and I thank you all for all these questions. I've tried to kind of bundle some of them. The one question we didn't get to is about CTC. What is CTC's role? And the question was, is it just going to now be a feeder? And I would say that CTC's role in this future is everything they've been doing plus. So all of the workforce, the culinary arts and the welding and the automotive technology and the process tech and the drafting, all of that stuff continues. Certificates, associates, workforce is needed more than ever. But add to that now a more deliberate, of these students who kind of didn't meet the 2.5 GPA to get into the research university, that bundle of students, which is not insignificant, now how do we ensure their success too? So I think for CTC, it's everything you were doing plus more. CTC looms large in this new future. So we look forward to that, as do the rural campuses. And I will thank everyone for coming. I know there's a couple hundred people or so online up there, so thank you for joining. Thanks for the people who are here in the room. And I will say just one more thing, and that is that a couple years ago, it's very rare that a hat trick happens at a hockey game, but a couple years ago it happened, and when a hat trick happens, person scores their third goal of the game, which is again very rare, everybody throws their hat onto the ice, and several years ago, there were several hundred hats on the ice during the one game that somebody got a hat trick. This year, Matt Hubbard scored 3 goals in one game against UAA, and 1 hat flew out on the ice. So now you all know what a hat trick is. So next time we get a goal, we can have a few more hats out there. All right. Enrollment is everyone's job, and everyone's job is changing the world. What better way to end? Thank you all so much for your work, everybody's work on enrollment. It is our future, and it is what we have a lot of agency in. So thank you very much. Versa.